Labor unions are proving to be a driving factor leading up to the 2024 presidential election. New polling from the AFL-CIO finds that 2/3 of all Americans support labor unions. 88% of those under the age of 30 said they believe in the power of union organizing. Ray Zaccaro joins us now. He's Director of Public Affairs for the AFL-CIO, and one of the things that means is there's probably nobody at the White House he can't get on the phone pretty quickly. Ray, it's good to see you.
Major, it's so good to see you. It's been a while.
Ray, how would you describe the current state of the Biden re-election campaign?
Look, I think this president has the most remarkable record to run on. We've never seen a president in recent history that is as pro-labor as President Biden. And the fact is his record speaks for itself. But what I find really extraordinary is the uprise in popularity of labor unions that you just showed on that graphic from the poll that we released last week. It is a staggering number that 88% of people in America 30 and under are enthusiastically supportive of labor unions. And this president, look, Major, you've been covering politics a long time. You'd have to really search your memory bank to go back to find a president who used the word union in as many speeches as often as this president does.
Yes, I remember covering Bill Clinton. He didn't do it that often. He did, not under duress, but in selective places, selective audiences. President Obama leaned in a little bit more, but not nearly as much as President Biden.
Right. Well, I think President Biden's record is clear here, which is why we made an historic decision early on to endorse President Biden right away. And we had an extraordinary event in Philadelphia back in June where we saw it was a labor union member-driven event. Everybody that spoke there, with the exception of the President of the United States, were labor union members. The support across the board for President Biden with union members is very strong. But what's also strong is the support for unions across America. You know, we're seeing 71% of Americans support labor unions, support union activism right now. And I think that speaks to the political climate that we're in and why this president stands a really great chance of re-election because of the support of labor unions and his support of the working people in America.
Ray, to clarify, you don't harbor any anxiety whatsoever about the state of the energized part of the Biden-Harris re-election campaign, meaning its voter outreach, connection with Latinos, key constituencies within the party? Everything's Jake?
Well, look, we have an awful lot of work to do ahead of the election, which is why we got out so early. But there is no organization, there's no institution in America that has the ability to mobilize its people and its communities like the America's labor unions. What we see regularly, and it's started happening already, is unions have an uncommon ability to be able to speak one-on-one with voters. They're going to be at your door. We're going to be in your community. We're going to be on the job site. We can talk directly about why a president who unleashed $300 billion in spending to rebuild our nation's infrastructure is making it easier for Americans to be able to form labor unions as opposed to the past, where we saw a steady string of deregulation and changes to labor laws that made it harder for Americans to workers to speak up and form unions on the job. And people are noticing, look, we just came through a historic pandemic. People are very conscious of what American work looks like. We're also very conscious of the fact that there are some huge disparities in this country, and these are political issues. The fact that we just released a report a few days ago that showed that a CEO makes 272% more than the average worker. 270 years ago, that number was 20 times more than the average worker. This is 272 times the average worker. That's going to be an issue on election day. And that's going to be the kind of stuff that people are going to be knocking on doors. Union members are going to be talking to voters about. And union members, who are voters too, care deeply about those issues.
Ray, when you talk to other Democrats who are anxious, in some cases more so than anxious, deeply nervous about poll data that shows nationally and in some swing states, the president running even or slightly behind former President Trump, who right now, and I say right now, emphasizing that, is the front runner for the Republican nomination. And they see persistent data showing, even among Democrats, anxiety about the president's age and his ability to competently fill out a second term. What do you tell them? Do you share those anxieties, or are you like, don't worry about it, it's all good?
Well, look, the AFL-CIO and labor unions aren't about Democratic or Republican candidates. What we're about is candidates who care about working people and are delivering. You have a president who has delivered uh, historic gains for workers in this country. He's opening up a whole field of clean energy jobs that never existed before in this realm. Historic investments in bringing our economy up to the date that we're living in of the 21st century, and not to mention the fact that make prescription drug costs lower. These are the kind of kitchen table issues that people care deeply about, and I think that that's what motivates voters. We see this all the time in elections. There's always a naysayer quotient about the sky is falling and we're not going to field the right candidate. Fact is, President Biden has delivered in ways for American workers that no president before him in recent memory has, and I think our workforce knows that, because there are people in this country who are still reeling from the effects of the pandemic. And the fact is, they're seeing the economy improve day by day. It's improving every day for working people. What we've got to do is we've got to make sure that we take this historic amount of time that we have, we've never had this kind of lead time, and start informing voters and making sure that people understand just what's on the ballot this year. What's on the ballot is a candidate who will continue to fight for working people. What's on the ballot are issues that people care about every day that affect their pocketbooks and their families and their ability to organize and work and be recognized for the work that they do.
Ray, with about a minute to go, in 2016, Hillary Clinton had all the endorsements, but labor support dropped from where it had been in the 2012 election and the 2008 election with President Obama. What's going to be different in 2024, and how do you make it so?
Well, I think we can go back to where we started this conversation, Major. 88% of people in this country, 30 and under, support this president. Across party lines, support labor unions, rather, support the union effort. And that mobilization of the unions in this country will be unlike any force we've ever seen in politics. We're fully committed. And that 88% of young Americans who are hearing our message, who are hearing the message of why it's so important to have a worker-centric economy, they are with us. Now, the job of unions, the job of everybody who's concerned about this upcoming election and our democracy, is to get out and talk to those people who are receptive to the issues that matter most to American workers, America's families. And I will tell you this, just in closing, the enthusiasm right now that we're seeing for people who are out there working every day, who we're seeing nine out of 10 Americans who are saying we support workers. It makes a difference, and we know who supports American workers too.
Ray Zaccaro, we thank you for your time.
Thanks so much.